Good afternoon to you. I'm Janet Roach, and welcome to Live Impact News. This afternoon, we are going to start in Washington, D.C. with the U.S. House. They are debating right now 5 spending bills, and this is to reopen the government. Debate is going on right now. We know that we're in a partial government shutdown, so let's jump in and listen to some of this debate.
The laws of this country and the conduct of law enforcement. Let's pass this bill and then focus on that which the country wants us to focus on like a laser for them, for the people. I yield back my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my very good friend and the distinguished chairman of the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Adderholt.
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today, as my colleagues are, in support of FY26 appropriations package, which, as it's been said, provides the full year funds for 5 out of the remaining 6 appropriation bills. Unfortunately, funding these bills is not an optional thing. It's a part of our constitutional requirement, and we must act on our commitment to the American people. With this bill that is before us today, the government will continue operating effectively and provide stability for the American people. The path forward in this legislation reflects President Trump's negotiations and direction to avoid a long-term partial shutdown and keep the government operating without further disruptions. As chairman of the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Related Agencies Subcommittee, I'm honored to work with the ranking member of this subcommittee, Ms. DeLauro, who also serves as ranking member of the full committee, in making sure that what we do in this legislation provide funding for critical projects that provide support and for jobs for local growth in our districts. The Labor, Health and Human Services bill on the floor today balances the need for responsible fiscal stewardship while maintaining key investments in biomedical research, schools, and in public health. Thanks to the negotiations on a bicameral, bipartisan level, funding decisions have moved through a deliberative, member-driven process that emphasizes transparency, accountability, as well as timely consideration. The Labor H bill before us demonstrates the will of the American people who want new priorities and accountability in government, including priorities to make America healthy again and make America skilled again. Investments in this bill are directed to where they matter most, into life-saving biomedical research and resilient medical supply chains, classrooms and training that prepare the next generation for success, and rural hospitals and primary care to end chronic disease epidemic. These measures are part of an agreement that keeps the FY26 spending levels below the spending that was projected under the current continuing resolution, which delivers real savings for the American taxpayers. Enactment and passage of a full-year appropriation is vital. In conclusion, I want to thank the staff on both sides of the majority and the minority for all their hard work in getting this bill across the finish line. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, I urge my colleagues to support the underlying bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina, the distinguished ranking member of the Transportation, Housing and Urban Development Subcommittee, Mr. Clyburn.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I thank the gentlelady for yielding me the time. Madam Chair, I rise as ranking member of the Transportation and Housing Appropriations Subcommittee in strong support of this bipartisan legislation, in large measure because it freezes funding for the Department of Homeland Security at its current level, while allowing for several days, 10 to be exact, for us to continue to zero in on that segment of the legislation and hopefully reach a bipartisan agreement. but we have already reached bipartisan agreements on 5 other sections. And one of those in this bill includes $113 billion in discretionary spending for transportation and housing programs and reflects a renewed commitment to addressing the affordability crisis and improving the safety of our transportation systems. For housing, the bill prevents the eviction of more than 4 million low-income households served through HUD's rental assistance programs, including those currently served by Section 8 and public housing. The bill reinforces efforts to combat homelessness by increasing funding for homeless assistance grants by $366 million. It protects investments for mayors and governors by providing $3.3 billion for the popular Community Development Block Grants Program. And it includes $58 million for housing counseling assistance for renters and first-time homebuyers, and $8 million to continue legal aid for eviction assistance. For transportation, the bill invests in the safety of the flying public by increasing FAA operations by nearly $230 million, enabling the hiring of 2,500 new air traffic controllers. It increases funding for the air traffic control towers and facilities by 26% above fiscal year 2025. The bill also protects investments for continuing Amtrak service along the Northeast Corridor and National Network by providing $2.4 billion. And the bill also includes $100 million for the 2026 World Cup and $94 million for the 2028 Olympics to help transit agencies manage local transportation in support of games across the country. Madam Chair, this year's transportation and housing bill will provide greater economic certainty to communities across the country and improve the day-to-day lives of everyday people. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Now yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished chairman of the Subcommittee on Defense of the Committee on Appropriations, the gentleman from California, Mr. Calvert.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, and I want to thank my good friend from Oklahoma, Chairman Tom Cole, to a job well done. I rise today in strong support of the Senate amendment to H.R. 7148, which includes my bill, the Department of Defense Appropriations Act of fiscal year 2026. This legislation was a true bipartisan effort by all 4 corners of the Defense Appropriations Committee. The world is more dangerous than ever. China continues its rapid military expansion. Russia and Iran remain persistent threats. Illicit drugs continue to harm Americans here at home. This bill answers to that challenge. It provides $839.2 billion to strengthen deterrence, support the administration's America First defense agenda, and to modernize our force. It invests in next-generation aircraft, the nuclear triad, critical munitions, missile defense, naval power, funding 17 new ships, and sustaining fleet readiness. The bill also drives innovation and efficiency, delivers a 3.8% pay raise for our service members, strengthens counter-drug efforts, and invests in our defense industrial base and infrastructure. These are strategic investments to protect the American people, project strength abroad, and I urge all my colleagues to support this bill. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields back. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Hawaii, a member of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Case.
The gentleman from Hawaii is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this member as a member of the Appropriations Committee, as well as of our subcommittees on Defense and on Homeland Security. Madam Speaker, I join the vast majority of Americans in condemning the actions of immigration and customs enforcement. Brutality and death in our streets, so-called leaders trashing victims and their grieving families, warrantless searches, fear in our own citizens. I had a state senator in my own district tell me this last week that she was fearful of going out to talk to her constituents in her district without her passport. This is unacceptable, this is un-American, and ICE must be reformed. And until it is, neither it nor its parent entity, the Department of Homeland Security, should be fully funded. And the best way for us to reform ICE is to keep our laser focus on ICE reform. And this measure does exactly that. It gives this administration and my majority colleagues 10 days to work with us all to do the right thing, and unless the right thing is done, we should not fund the Department of Homeland Security. But this measure also funds 70% of our federal government rather than shut it down again. And let me focus on just a few areas where this is critical. Let's start with defense, half of our total budget. In a time that it is critical to our national security that our Defense Department be fully operating, be fully focused, be nimble, be quick, the ability to adjust, and yet we have kept our Defense Department essentially crippled for 16 months now since the last time that we funded it in regular order and gave it direction through funding and oversight was fiscal year 2024. They've been operating on a continuing resolution for 16 months now, and that cripples national security. That is a national security risk. No new programs, procurement that is excessively expensive because it cannot function over multi-years, no effective system-wide modernization. Any military leader will tell you that the worst thing going for it right now, in a time when it has to adjust to the PRC, to Russia, across a variety of focuses, is now that it needs full flexibility. Financial services and general government, this bill funds the federal courts. Can we envision a time in our history when it was not more important that the federal courts be fully staffed and funding? I don't think so. This bill funds Social Security. It enables Social Security to continue to function for the millions of Americans who depend on it at a time when Social Security is being crippled by staff cuts. Foreign affairs. This bill provides continued security assistance to our friends and allies throughout the world. It maintains some effective projection of presence out there into the world. It funds the Countering PRC Influence Fund that is so important to us. Transportation, the Federal Aviation Administration, it funds the FAA so that our air transportation system can continue to fund. Federal workers overall, who have borne the brunt of our failure to appropriate in regular order, millions throughout our country, it helps them by assuring them that they can continue without great doubt. We must pass this measure now, and it must not be, need not be.
I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
Additional minute.
It must not be, need not be, and will not be at the expense of ICE reform. We sacrifice none of that mandate to reform ICE by passing this bill today. I would finally say to our Department of Homeland Security employees out there who have served us so well through so much difficulty, to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Homeland Security Investigations, Customs and Border Protection, Transportation Security Administration. You do critical work for us. And we apologize to you that we must create uncertainty to you for the foreseeable future, but we ask you to understand that reforming ICE is critical not just to those that are suffering at the hands of ICE. It is critical to our country. You will be paid. You will be paid because this continues your pay. But the uncertainty, until we get this resolved, you must live with. We appreciate your cooperation. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my very good friend, my classmate, the co-chairman of the full committee and the chairman of the subcommittee on national security and related programs, distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to Chairman Cole. Actually, I'm going to reserve what I'm going to say about Chairman Cole to the end, but also to the ranking member of the full committee, Congresswoman DeLauro, Congresswoman Frankel, the subcommittee ranking member. Look, this full-year funding really refocuses our nation's foreign policy in historic ways. It focuses on U.S. national security, but it does so while also restoring fiscal sanity. In this area, in the foreign policy arena, it actually reduces spending by 16%. But within those really historic reductions, the bill does more to counter our adversaries like China, Iran, the cartels in our hemisphere, and to support our allies and friends. It does a lot more, but spending a lot less.
All right, you've been listening to the debate on the House floor on the 5 spending bills and to extend funding for DHS, Department of Homeland Security, for about 10 days while they negotiate some reforms. Let's go to the White House. Caroline Leavitt is speaking right now to reporters live, and we want to dip in and find out what she's talking about. So let's take that now.
Highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
Just to follow up on that, he said specifically that they should take over elections in 15 states. Can you tell us what he meant by that, what 15 states he's referring to in terms of Republicans taking over elections?
Again, what I was just telling you is that with the passage of the SAVE Act, voter ID will be implemented across all 50 states. The president was referring to specific states in which we have seen a high degree of fraud. If you look at states like California, or if you look at New York City, for example, non-citizens are allowed to vote in elections in places like California and New York City. That just creates a system, an electoral system, that is absolutely ripe with fraud. And you cannot deny the fact that, unfortunately, there are millions of people who have questions about that, as does the president. He wants to make it right, and the SAVE Act is a solution to doing it. Daniel?
Good to see you. The January ISM manufacturing PMI hit a score of north of 52. It's the best score since August of 2022. What should that tell Americans about manufacturing activity possibly surging under the Trump administration?
Well, the president's tariffs are working, and his economic agenda is working. When you combine tariffs and reshoring American manufacturing and investments in this country, which the president has played a huge role in directly recruiting those investments from countries and companies all over the world to the United States, you're creating jobs. We've seen construction jobs have surged in the past few months. That's because those factories are being built right here in the United States, and we're putting Americans to work. So our manufacturing sector is obviously something the president cares a lot about. That's why he's so determined and dedicated to his tariff policy, which, as you all saw yesterday, the president struck another great trade deal with India. He spoke with Prime Minister Modi directly. They share a very good relationship. India committed to not only no longer purchasing Russian oil, but buying oil from the United States, also perhaps from Venezuela too, which we know will now have a direct benefit on the United States and the American people. And in addition to that, Prime Minister Modi committed to $500 billion of investments into the United States, including for transportation, for energy, and for agricultural products as well. So this is another great trade deal thanks to President Trump.
Why was Tulsi Gabbard involved in a domestic law enforcement search in Georgia?
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director, Kash Patel. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the President tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue that most people want to see solved. Maybe you don't, but I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard is focused on doing.
Is there something specific that the president has concerns about that led him to ask the Director of National Intelligence to go down to Fulton County?
I just explained the president's concerns with voting in this country, and it's something that he wants to see solved for future elections, and I think that's something all Americans can get behind.
President has called President Petro drug dealer, thug, lunatic, and President Petro has called the American army to not pay attention to President Trump. Do you think President Trump had a hope that this relationship could be fixed?
I think the president invited President Petro and accepted that offer for him to meet President Petro, and the president spoke a few weeks ago. As you know, President Petro said he'd love to come to Washington. President Trump said, sure, come. So I think that speaks for itself, and again, I'm sure the president will provide a readout of that meeting.
Given the recent news and what just happened, how much does this escalate tensions ahead of these critical talks that are happening with Witkoff?
Well, look, I just spoke with Special Envoy Witkoff, and these talks, as of right now, are still scheduled. President Trump is always wanting to pursue diplomacy first, but obviously it takes two to tango. You need a willing partner to achieve diplomacy, and that's something that Special Envoy Witkoff is intent on exploring and discussing. As always, though, of course, the president has a range of options on the table with respect to Iran. As commander-in-chief, I think they learned that quite well last year with the strike in Operation Midnight Hammer, which was wildly successful and obliterated their nuclear capabilities. But those talks will continue later this week as far as we're concerned right now.
President Trump was talking yesterday about how President Putin had agreed to a week-long halt on attacks on Ukraine because of the cold weather. But today we've seen that Russia has launched some of the heaviest attacks this month. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I spoke with the president about it this morning, and his reaction was unfortunately unsurprised. These are two countries who have been engaged in a very brutal war for several years, a war that would have never started if the president were still in office. It started because of the weakness and incompetence of the previous president, Joe Biden, and that's why the president continues so aggressively to pursue diplomacy to end this war. That's why Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in Abu Dhabi tomorrow for another round of trilateral talks. I would note the trilateral talks that took place last week or the week prior are historic by nature. Never before have all three of our countries really been able to sit down at the negotiating table to move the ball forward towards peace. So Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner and President Trump made the impossible possible with respect to peace in the Middle East, and I know they're looking to do the same with respect to the Russia-Ukraine war as well.
Jake. On Harvard, the president said yesterday he's now seeking $1 billion from Harvard. One, how do you arrive at that number? And two, he said he wants criminal, not just civil, charges against individuals at Harvard. Does he want to see Harvard officials arrested there criminally?
Look, I will let the president and also the Justice Department and those who will be pursuing that against Harvard speak on the specifics of that matter. But I know that the president wants to see a deal struck with Harvard that is appropriate and that ensures they are held responsible for the criminal behavior, the illegal behavior, the harassment and the targeting of Jewish American students on their campus that took place over the course of the last several years. This is something the administration has been working on over the course of the last year, and the president himself has been directly involved, as evidenced by that Truth Social statement as well.
What does President Trump want to see happen during this 2-week negotiation period for DHS funding? Is he confident that a deal will be reached? And what specifically is he willing to accept on some of the ICE and Border Patrol reforms that Democrats are asking for?
Well, look, President Trump will be the ultimate decider of any policy changes on anything, especially with respect to immigration enforcement. What I will tell you is the president is never going to waver in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and protecting the public safety of the American people, in his ardent support of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, who unfortunately the Democrat Party has made a decision to demonize. I heard Senator Schumer referring to them as Donald Trump's Nazi secret police force, I believe were his words. I don't recall that same language being used when President Obama was in the White House and was deporting millions of illegal aliens from our country using this very same agency and these very same agents, who, by the way, have jobs because of the laws that were passed by Congress. So as for policy discussions that will take place, Congress will have those. The president will decide on those. You saw yesterday Secretary Noem announced that DHS agents on the ground in Minnesota will begin using and wearing body cams. That's something DHS is looking to roll out nationwide, assuming they have the funding for it. So that could be part of the discussion. I know Tom Homan has been on the ground in Minnesota. He's there again today for direct dialogue with state and local officials to move these conversations forward as well. And I think you'll be hearing more from Mr. Homan tomorrow on some of the progress that has been made. So look, we're willing obviously to have this dialogue and to talk and to listen, but we are not going to concede in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and delivering on the mandate the president was given by nearly 80 million Americans to deport illegal alien criminals from our country.
Venezuela, any preparations for a visit from Delcy Rodriguez from Venezuela, and your statements on the political prisoners situation in Venezuela?
Sure. I don't have a date for a visit at this time. I know it is something that has been discussed, but no firm plans at this point.
All right, so there you have it. Caroline Leavitt at the White House touching on a number of different topics, from the Russian-Ukraine war to some of the ICE reforms that Democrats are demanding, and saying that President Trump stands by ICE and the enforcement operations that have been going on. And one of the things she did mention was the SAVE Act. That was towards the beginning when we first went to that, and she mentioned that that is called the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. It is something that Chuck Schumer, the Democrat leader in the Senate, says is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0. That's what he calls it. And so there have been some issues lately about voter security. We know that a few days ago that the FBI was in Atlanta in Fulton County, and they did a raid where they took a number of ballots dating back from 2020. Tulsi Gabbard was there. She's the director of national intelligence. You heard one reporter ask, why was she there? And Caroline Leavitt mentioned that she has been appointed by the president to oversee the security of American elections, and that's why she was there. That's something that we're going to talk about a little bit more coming up later in Live Impact, because Senator Mark Warner, Virginia, held a news conference about that very issue, about his concerns about this this look at voter security and what happened in Georgia, in Fulton County, and the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was there. So we're going to play that news conference, which just ended a little while ago. We're going to get to that a little bit later. But for now, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Lots going on today. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. Lots going on today. We have a lot of different news conferences that we want to get to. For now, we're going to dip back with the U.S. House as they debate those 5 spending bills, as well as an extension for 2 weeks on funding the Department of Homeland Security. This vote could get the government back open. We're in a partial shutdown right now. Let's listen in on some of the debate still going on.
Incredible and I think unparalleled in the history of the speakership, in my view. I want to thank the other members of our leadership, Leader Scalise, Whip Emmer, Conference Chair McLean. They all worked really hard to make sure that we could come together, work across the lines, give us the freedom and flexibility that we needed, but also provide the persuasion that was necessary, both within our own ranks and across the aisle. I want to thank especially the Cardinals and the ranking members of the subcommittee. The ranking member and I agree. We had tried to force decision-making down because we trust our Cardinals and ranking members. They know their subjects. They know one another. They work together. Without them, and they solved most of the issues that were before us, we wouldn't be here. And that model worked well because the people that we relied on, our chairman and our ranking members, were people that we know and trust, and frankly, that know one another and trust one another and work well together. I'm extraordinarily proud of this committee for what it did. I also particularly want to thank my friend, the ranking member, across the aisle. Now, we don't always agree. As a matter of fact, once our mutual friend and former colleague, Ambassador Rahm Emanuel, called us the odd couple. That may be true. We don't usually start in the same place. But we are here today able to fund the government, 76% of the government of the United States, because of the ranking member and because of her leadership and her hard work to find common ground. I admire her tremendously as a person. I appreciate her as a working partner. We also had working partners in the United States Senate. We didn't have Chairman Collins. We didn't have Ranking Member Patty Murray. We wouldn't be here either. Again, this is not just a bipartisan or a House agreement. This is a bicameral agreement. And those institutional lines are sometimes more difficult than the partisan lines to negotiate. We managed to do that. I'm proud of each and every one of my ranking partners, but particularly the ranking member of my committee, the Appropriations Committee in the House. So we've had a lot of folks that have worked hard, and we may have some disagreements in the coming days. Probably will. I'd be surprised if we don't. But I know if we work hard, we can work through them and get to a successful conclusion. My friend, for instance, mentioned body cameras. I couldn't agree more. It was something we added in the bill, but it was something she advocated for and championed. We agree on the need for additional training. There's lots we can find in common as we try to work through this, and I hope we're able to do that. But the important thing today, Mr. Speaker, is to finish the task. To take these bills, which represent the vast majority of things where we have found common ground, an agreement and a process of give and take and good faith efforts and compromise and debate, and make sure that they pass and reach the President's desk so we do not put American federal workers and American soldiers and American public servants out of work. We let them do their job on behalf of the American people. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support what is genuinely a bicameral and bipartisan product, and one that the President has signed and urged, or will sign, and has urged us to pass. And with that, Mr. Speaker, again, I urge passage of this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 1032, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion by the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Lady
Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
All right, as you see there, they are voting on a motion to concur in the Senate amendments. This is all related to the government shutdown, the partial government shutdown that we're in right now. And so they've been debating 5 full-year spending bills. 5 full-year spending bills, and that will fund much of the government, including the Departments of Defense, Health and Human Services, Housing, and Transportation through the end of September. And the other part of this package is to temporarily fund the Department of Homeland Security for about 10 days or so, about 2 weeks. That way, during that period of time, they will be discussing the reforms that a lot of the Democrats and even some Republicans also want to ICE operations, and this is following the shooting deaths of the 2 people, U.S. citizens in Minneapolis that happened over the last couple of weeks. So this has been a talker. A number of different politicians have been talking about this and the need to do something different when it comes to ICE and some of the reforms that they want. What they would like is for federal agents to be held to the same type of limitations that state and local law enforcement that they're held to. They want more targeted operations and not roving ICE patrols. So the vote on the final passage is supposed to be happening about now. So we're looking here. This is on the motion to concur in the Senate amendments. Not sure if this is actually the final passage that actually opens the federal government. And he said it was a 15-minute vote, 12 minutes. They have 12 minutes left. We're going to continue to watch this. Going to take a quick break right now and make sure that we keep you up to date on what the House does and whether or not the partial government shutdown comes to an end. All right, welcome back to Live Impact. What is happening right now? That top box, you can see that is where the House is voting on final passage of the funding package. And this is a package that will fund the Pentagon, the State Department, the Education Department, the Treasury Department, and more agencies, transportation, Health and Human Services. And this is going to fund the government through September. It's also going to fund the Department of Homeland Security until February 13th. And that's going to give lawmakers some time to negotiate over reforms to immigration enforcement. So this has happened there after much debate. The Senate has already passed this. So what they're voting, when you see that on the motion to concur in the Senate amendments, that is to match what the Senate has already done. So if this passes, it will end the partial government shutdown that we're in right now. And let me look at the numbers right here. You see, yay, Republican 30, Democrats 35. So it's close, and 6 Democrats so far have voted in favor of this bill in order to get the government back open. We're going to switch over a little right now to NASA, because you may know that they were set to do the launch on February 8th. A new moon project, the Artemis, was going to launch in literally just a couple of days, but they did this test just yesterday, and there's some problems with the test, and now they're delaying it to March. Let's listen in a little bit on how NASA is explaining what's next and what the problems might be.
Denise Chow with NBC News.
Hi, thanks so much. It sounds like for now work will be happening out at the pad. But I was curious if you have any early indications yet about whether you might need to roll back to the VAB. And then if you guys need it, are there launch opportunities beyond April that are available?
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at that. As I said earlier, right now it looks like the work that needs to be done can be done out at the pad. So we're gonna assess that. If that changes, we'll let people know. But that's the intent. As far as the launch opportunities, I know we've published what those opportunities and what the available dates are that could be targeted. We published those for February, March, and April. We've got opportunities in every month, several days. So, if necessary, we'll go beyond that. But yeah, there are opportunities. We do have, as you know, constraints on a variety of different constraints that determine just how many days within the lunar month we have available for launching. You've seen for February, March, and April, it's on the order of about 5 or 6 days. It'll be something similar. It varies month to month, but yes, there are additional opportunities.
Okay, next on the phone we have Anthony Leone with Spectrum 13.
Hello, and thank you very much for taking our call today. With the leak issues that Artemis 1 and 2 have faced, will this reinforce NASA's consideration of using a different vehicle for Artemis 3, such as Blue Origin's Blue Moon lunar lander, which was something that then acting Administrator Sean Duffy talked about? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So we are, of course, heavily partnered with Blue Origin and SpaceX and other super heavy lift launch vehicle providers. They're integral to our architecture. So we're going to continue to partner with them and share learnings and implement and cut them into our mission plan. So that's certainly true. Changing commodity on SLS or changing the design debt in that severe way will probably disable the production significantly, and make a change. You expect a change. We're as discussed earlier, it's hard enough for us to get into a flight-like configuration in a lot of these tests, and so now putting a big design square wave into it, I'm not sure would have the value that we'd expect. What we really want to do is let industry innovate on their own machines, and then when they're ready to support our missions, we'll cut them into the architecture and use them as we need to.
We have Marcia Smith with Space Policy Online.
Thanks so much. Could you tell us how long you can keep the stack out at the pad? And I seem to recall that on Artemis 1, one of the factors was you needed to change the batteries on the flight termination system. Is that still an issue this time, or have you found a way around that?
Sure.
There are some batteries with flight termination that will need servicing, but we talked earlier about the pad access that we now have available for Artemis 2. That was a lesson learned from Artemis 1. So there are some things that we can do servicing out at the pad. I will say that we do have other batteries. For example, the cryogenic propulsion stage, our upper stage, that those batteries will need to be serviced at some point. And so that if we go beyond the March time window, we probably would have to roll back in order to access those batteries. That's anticipated right now. So, yeah. Did you want to add to that, Charlie?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, we'll take one more on the phone and then come back into the room. Next question is from Josh Dinner with Space.com.
Hi, thank you so much. Just a clarification question. You mentioned the quick disconnect. Is that the same component that caused issues with Artemis 1? And is it a piece of ground equipment that would have been refurbished or replaced after that launch? Or is it the same physical piece of hardware?
So it's different hardware on the flight side. It's same. The major components are similar on the ground side. There's probably some small parts and things like that that get refreshed.
Okay, we'll come back to the room here in the white sweater.
All right, so that is the news conference held by NASA. This is due to the delayed launch of this moon project, the Artemis 2. They're now saying March will be sometime in March will be the time for the launch, and this was delayed by NASA after they completed a wet dress rehearsal, what's called a wet dress rehearsal, and found some problems with this rehearsal and said that, obviously for safety reasons, we need to delay this. All right, the vote is still going on by the House, the U.S. House on the government shutdown. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll go back to the U.S. Capitol for that. Live Impact News. The House is still voting on final passage of the funding package that will reopen the government in a partial shutdown. So we are watching that. But for now, we always want to know about the weather, right? Did you go outside today and say, oh my gosh, this feels like a heat wave after all that cold weather we've been having? So Taylor Stephenson, our meteorologist, is here with us right now to talk about what we're expecting today and throughout the rest of the week. Hey, Taylor.
Hey, Janet. What's going on?
Hey.
I agree. I walked out. I was like, I didn't actually complain for the first day and
know.
like a week that it was cold.
I know.
And it's sad because even hitting the 40s today is the first time we've done it in 8 days. And that's still below normal. We should be somewhere around 51. So 40s really shouldn't be that great to us. But because we've had such a bitterly cold stretch of weather, 40s feels like heaven.
It really, yeah, you could really feel the difference.
You do, but unfortunately that does come to an end fairly quickly. We did have a huge streak though. We actually ended up with 132 consecutive hours of at or below freezing temperatures. And that was the longest streak in the millennium, so since 2000. It did not crack into the top 5 since the records began in 1948, but it was definitely top 10. So something to keep in mind. Here's what I'm tracking across the area. I am tracking the temperatures that are not as cold today as we just mentioned, but I am tracking also a couple of chances for some winter precip coming across the area. That I know. Some cold rain, maybe some wet snowflakes starting late tonight, and then another chance tomorrow night. And then a quieter pattern this weekend. We've had a couple of weekends in a row where we've been dealing with wet or winter weather. And finally, we get one weekend that's quiet, but it's going to be pretty cold. So it's kind of give and take here in Hampton Roads this week. Right now, satellite radar shows that we have increasing cloud cover. Not really any showers in the immediate area, just to the west of us at the moment. But again, we should say mainly dry throughout the day. Walking you through your Tuesday quickly, highs will be in the middle to upper 40s. It's still about 4 to 5 degrees below normal for this time of year, but about 10 to 12 degrees warmer than yesterday. And so that's why it feels so much nicer outside. We have increasing cloud cover later on this afternoon and evening, and then a quick hit, maybe some scattered showers or scattered snow showers for the peninsulas overnight. This should maybe just lead to some snow flurries flying, but really not picking up much in the way of accumulation.
Okay.
We stay dry through the majority of Wednesday, but temperatures fall throughout the day. So during the afternoon, highs will be at best maybe a few degrees above freezing. So we're right back on that cold stretch tomorrow.
Oh, God.
I know. And a few scattered showers near the Albemarle. So let's pay attention a little closer to Wednesday evening. Here we stop at 7 o'clock. And you can see temperatures are just around freezing. And the dark blue purple, that is snow. The pink, that is like freezing rain or sleet. And then you get into the green, and that is going to be your cold rain. So for the south side and northeastern North Carolina, we could have some areas that pick up some snowfall. With the graph model, the newest run brings a good amount of snowfall to Hampton Roads in northeastern North Carolina with this, what we call a short wave, and it's a piece of upper level energy. And sometimes they can be strong enough to bring precipitation all the way down to the surface.
Virgo?
No Virgo, not this time. This past weekend, yes, that was definitely Virgo. We overcame it eventually, but this looks like to be a heavier wet snow. So even if it is dry on Wednesday night, because the snow's going to have so much moisture, it's actually going to take longer for it to vaporize if it falls into a dry atmosphere.
Okay.
Because we had those really small snowflakes over the weekend.
Yeah.
Those are really quick to just, right? Because there's not as much moisture to get rid of. So if you have heavier snowflakes, it's easier to get to the ground in a dry atmosphere. Okay. So this is Wednesday night around 11:45 to midnight on Thursday morning.
Yeah.
And you can see kind of widespread snow showers for the south side and northeastern North Carolina, kind of that wintry mix. Peninsulas, you may see in a few areas of some snow, but it's really going to be concentrated around the south side this time if the graph model holds together. This takes us to around 4:30 to 5 a.m. on Thursday, and you can see the snow really falling apart, which is good because that means by the heart of the work commute, we're not talking snow showers. But if we do get enough snow, we may not see people going into work as early on Thursday. Right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on how much comes down. But by Thursday afternoon, we're much drier, but cloud cover sticks around. And so do those cold temperatures. Highs on Thursday may be at best in the mid-30s or just near freezing. So another stretch of cold weather. Okay, let's compare the models. Because we're right back in the same situation we were in. Actually, the European model just updated. So that's why we like Live Impact News. We get updates when we are not on camera, right?
Yeah.
So the North American model, that's the NAM. And you can see that's the left panel. That left panel shows maybe 1 to 2.5 inches of snowfall for the peninsulas in the south side, maybe a dusting for northeastern North Carolina. As a caveat, the North American model, the NAM, is not very good at forecasting winter precipitation. It's more of a severe weather model, so it's better for the springtime. The American model usually isn't good all year round. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. It's okay. I prefer the European models, much more accurate. But the GFS model, the Global Forecast System, or the American model, that's the middle panel, shows a dusting. The European model actually looked more like the GFS earlier this morning, and now this, middle of the afternoon, it actually picked up a few more snowflakes sticking to the ground, so maybe up to an inch of snowfall across the south side, and a dusting pretty much everywhere else. Now, now I'm just showing you models. Again, this is not to freak anybody out. This is not to show that this is what we think. I'll show you our thinking in just a moment. I do want to show you one more model that was kind of the extreme end of this scenario. Now, mind you, the graph model is our in-house model that we use here at Tegna. And this model was the model I just showed you on the Futurecast that showed all this, like the snow coming through the rain. Right. So this is going to match up to the forecast model I just showed you, showing the timing of the rain. Look at what it brings to Hampton Roads by Thursday. Oh, sorry. It went all the way. It went too far. Oops. Let's go. And let's zoom back in. Okay. Sorry, it went too far. It's a short range model, so it can only go out so far. So, and it's not going to snow on Friday, so I'll even pull it back a little bit further. We're going to take it to around Thursday evening. This one is like the outlier right now, showing maybe up to 3 to 5 inches on portion of the south side. If this solution comes true. So you're talking some models saying a dusting, some saying 1 to 2, some saying 3 to 5. And that's why the confidence is super low in this forecast. I mean, you have wide ranges. A dusting's not going to do much here. 3 to 5 inches could be something that keeps kids out of school for a couple days, right? So it's a big difference in terms of impact.
Yeah, if it stays cold.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be cold. Temperature's going to be in the 30s. So, I mean, if the snow does fall and it sticks, it would stick around for at least a couple days. Or at least a day or so. So I'm just showing this to show all the models. This is not to say we're biased towards one or the other. But I want to show you our thinking so far. Now, this being said, Craig and I work the morning shift. So I'm sure that Evan and Tim will be here in just a moment analyzing the models and seeing what they come up with their new update on the snowfall map. So look out for one around 4 to 5 p.m. today. But right now we're thinking maybe a dusting up to 1.5 inches for the south side and portions of northeastern North Carolina. Everywhere else, maybe just a dusting. And that's through Thursday morning. Now, of course, things can change. But a dusting to 1.5 inches of snowfall, not going to really do much in terms of impacts here in Hampton Roads. That's easy to clear. And I'm sure that by the time we get to, now we may, if this happens, just before the morning commute, the last of the snow, we may see delays in school, but that's pretty much about it. Because by Friday, temperatures will be back in the 40s.
Okay. Okay. Could keep some people out on Thursday.
Yeah.
You wake up and the streets are white, then you're,
Yeah, and you're more likely to see a delay or asynchronous learning, meaning that you're going to be online instead of being in person.
Yeah.
But otherwise, right now we're thinking a pretty low impact event. But things obviously could change, and you see that other models are suggesting higher. So we'll see what happens. But that is going to be, again, Wednesday night. So we still have about 36 hours to really nail down this forecast.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Any questions, y'all?
We're going to be prepared.
Of course.
Now, into next week, does it look like the temperatures are they staying cool?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So temperatures, okay, this next 10-day graphic takes us just before Valentine's Day. Which is Saturday of next week. And you can see from now through Monday of next week, we should stay somewhere around the upper 30s to the lower 30s. Next time, around this time next week, we should be closer to 50. So getting better, but still below normal.
We're getting there.
Yeah, getting there slowly but surely. And you can see that temperatures will be in the 40s most likely next week. But I'm going to show you the 8 to 14-day outlook, because that will take us through Valentine's Day. So here we go. So we should be seeing maybe a little bit of precipitation, but in terms of the actual temperatures, we should be maybe right near or slightly above normal, which puts us right around maybe 52 degrees. But Craig did make a good point today. It could be the fact that we may see temperatures in the 60s for a couple days, and then we dip back to the 40s, which averages out to normal.
Okay.
So we have to really see, but it seems like as we get into Valentine's weekend, and isn't that President's Day weekend as well?
Yeah.
We should see temperatures at least near normal or slightly above for at least a few days. So that should be a nice welcome warmer. I know, finally. Yeah. I feel like this kind of past week and a half has made me feel like, okay, I'm ready for spring. Any touch of the 60s or 70s, I am wanting so badly right now.
Me too. That's going to feel so good. We cannot complain about the heat this summer.
No, we cannot. We complain all about the cold. Once it gets to 90, we got to keep our mouths shut.
No complaints about the heat this summer. Embrace it. No, we'll complain anyway, I'm sure. Oh, gosh. Taylor, thank you so much. You always do such a thorough job explaining everything.
Oh, thanks, Janet.
So, yeah,
thank
I really appreciate that. And folks who are watching are saying, wow, that was very helpful and useful. So we appreciate that.
Yes, of course.
Okay, I want Naya, you have to tell me, I was going to head to Pima County because the sheriff has just held an update. If you've been following the story of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, she is the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, and she is missing. She has been missing since they last saw her Saturday night around 9:45, and they reported her missing midday on Sunday. And they do believe, according to the sheriff, that this is a crime. There are signs of forced entry into her home, and they don't believe that she left on her own because they say that she has some mobility issues. But cognitively, they say she is sharp as a tack. So they just held an update. And do we have that? We can go to the Pima County.
That video is still loading right now because it just wrapped up, so I stopped that. We can take a break if you want.
Okay. We're going to take a break. And the House is still voting on that final passage. So we're going to take a quick break and come back with more. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. As I mentioned before the break, I said we're going to go out to Arizona to Pima County because the sheriff is holding a news conference on the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. She is the mother, once again, of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, been missing since late Saturday or early Sunday morning. Let's listen to any updates that they may have.
Good morning. I don't know that everybody knows who's here. Of course, I'm Sheriff Chris Natos. John Edwards is the Tucson chief here for the FBI, and he'll have some words for you as well. You know, this is really, for me, pretty new, all the media attention. So I apologize to you for sometimes I'm speaking in generalities, and I'm not used to everybody hanging on to my words and then trying to hold me accountable for what I say, but I understand. So we're going to try our best to be succinct with you in the future, and also more important for you to understand is we have a lot of work in front of us. We have a job to do, and we have someone's life who is in jeopardy. And so job number one is we got to find her, and we got to work hard to do that. I understand there's great attention on this, and rightfully so, and I appreciate it, and I thank you for it because it has generated a lot of leads for us. And so we're tracking those leads, and we're doing things with evidence that you would expect us to be doing. So having said that, we're going to set this up. I know that a number of you yesterday, you guys drove me crazy. Yesterday I was going from a.m. to all the way till 9, 10, 11, midnight, answering concerns and questions, and it's just too tough. And it's not fair to the case. So what I'm going to tell you is today we're going to do this similar to what we're doing right now. Here we'll take questions. It's not really my briefing, it's your briefing. You'll be able to ask us some questions. We'll probably shut you off after a while because I just can't be here all day. We have work to do. But we'll take some questions, and then in a couple of days, breaks. We'll do this every couple of days. So, and we'll set up with you through our PIO teams to give you anything that comes up that might change, but clearly they will notify you on these, what I call media briefings. So with that, I'm going to ask John to come up. If you've got a statement to say, John, and then we'll take some questions and we'll get back to work.
Hello, I'm John Edwards. My spelling is Jonedwards. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's office here in Tucson. First, we want the community to know that the FBI is doing everything in our power to bring Nancy Guthrie home to her family. The FBI is working alongside the Pima County Sheriff's Department on this incident. In terms of what the FBI is doing, we are providing the following support. Primarily, it's analytical and technical support in the following ways. We're downloading and analyzing cell phones, obtaining cell tower information, conducting interviews, and providing any and all investigative support that the Sheriff's Department needs. We're looking at this from every angle, but we need your help. If you live in the area or saw something on Saturday night, the 31st of January, or Sunday morning, the 1st of February, please report it to the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Every lead and tip is important. We are aggressively pursuing and looking into every single one. Again, please help us bring Nancy Guthrie home. Thank you.
We'll take some questions.
Sheriff, is there any indication so far as to whether this was a random abduction or targeted?
It's like I said earlier, you know, we're looking at all the leads, and we don't know. We're going to assume both sides of that. We'll look at both sides of that.
Do you have any idea what Nancy Guthrie was wearing, or the type of car that she might have left from, or any identifiable information that the public could use to help with those tips?
We do not.
Sheriff, do you believe that one or more than one person was involved in the kidnapping?
Just no clue. It could have been one, it could have been more. I don't know. Let me get one second.
Is there any indication that Nancy Guthrie is still alive? We know the medication played a critical role here. It's been 48 hours. She needs it every single day. Are you looking for someone that is still alive?
We hope we are. We hope we are.
Sheriff, you said earlier that you don't believe there's a wider threat to the public. If you're not sure if it's targeted, why do you believe there's no wider threat to the public?
Well, we have crime in Tucson all the time, right? Like any city. And so there, when you say a threat to the public, is there somebody out there who's kidnapping elderly people in the middle of the night every night? We've not heard that. We don't believe that's the case. We do believe that Nancy was taken from her home against her will, and that's where we're at.
Sheriff, when you reference violence at the site, can you elaborate on that? And also, was there a sign of forced entry, any valuables taken, any bank or ATM cards used after her disappearance?
We're not getting into that. What I'd tell you is, like any crime scene, we processed this crime scene. We gathered all the evidence we could, to include looking for what? Fingerprints, DNA, camera images, everything you can imagine. And we gathered that out. Those things have been submitted forward to labs, to technological companies to help us. And we're like you. We're waiting for those returns to come back.
Did you find DNA that did not belong in that house?
The window of time from when she was last seen to when she was reported missing, and I know you guys are asking for help from the public, is there any way to narrow down what time you might be helpful? I know there was a report about a pacemaker dinging like around 2 o'clock in the morning. Is there any way to indicate to people, hey, look around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to help them identify what they might have?
You know, I really don't want to get into narrowing down the time, because narrowing it down means we could miss some tips and leads. We're working on with the data we've submitted for investigative analysis. We're working to see if that time can be tightened up. But for now, we're going with what we told you earlier. She was dropped off at 9:30, and she was found to be missing at about 11 o'clock Sunday morning.
Sheriff,
Let me get this one first.
DNA of anyone else found in the house?
We've submitted all kinds of samples for DNA, and we've gotten some back, but nothing to indicate any suspects.
Anybody strange in the neighborhood? I know you're looking at video, different surveillance camera, anything that we should be looking out at, different cars?
I have nothing in that regard.
Have any demands been made by kidnappers?
We have all kinds of investigative leads we're working on.
Sheriff, we noticed that the camera on the front of the house is missing. Do you believe the perpetrator purposely took the camera?
Don't know that. We're looking into that as well.
Has that scene been fully processed now? We saw deputies leave around 6 o'clock last night. We didn't see tape go up. An Amazon driver was able to walk right up to the door. Is that pretty standard for how you handle this?
The scene is done. We're done with the residents. If we need to go back to get, maybe we want to do something with some other piece of evidence there, we contact the family and let them know. But we have turned that over to the family. I don't have the time, but it was sometime yesterday, I believe.
Have you recovered any tire tracks or any footprints around the house?
No.
Was there
Would you please take us through the timeline that you have established of the events so far, and with as much detail as you can?
9:30, 9:45, we were told she was left at her home by the family. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the family got notice from somebody at church that she was not at church. They went to the home, found her to be missing. That's the timeline. From Saturday night, 9:45, we'll say, to Sunday morning, 11 o'clock.
Have you been
Let me get somebody back here, please.
Have you interviewed the people that reported her missing, the people from the
That's the family. Oh, from the church as well. We're doing all kinds of interviews, yes, I'm sure we have.
Have you been able to access the footage from the cameras at the house?
That's all been submitted, and we're doing our best with those companies who own those cameras or built those cameras.
Are there any plans to release those videos from the cameras, from the surveillance? Are there any plans to release the video from the cameras, surveillance footage?
We don't even have them yet, so no, not at this time. This is an active investigation.
There's a report of a suspicious man a few doors down last week. Is that anything that you guys are aware of?
I'm not aware of it. My detectives may be. There's a lot of detective work being done, and I just can't get into those weeds or even discuss with you what they may not have learned. Yes, ma'am.
Support from the board yesterday. Are there specific resources that maybe the board has not granted that would have made a difference responding to this case?
Well, that's getting into my own local politics. I apologize. Yes, the board a few weeks ago denied a request for more cameras, more drones, more AI capabilities with our own body-worn cameras. All those things, you'd have to talk to the board. I'm not probably not the right time to go into this.
Sheriff,
Let me get somebody else here.
Sheriff,
Yes.
do you believe she's still in this area?
Do we
Do
believe?
you believe she's still in this area, or is there somewhere else?
We don't know where she is. So we're like any investigation. You start from the point of where we last saw her, and we work out, and we're working as far out as we can go.
Sheriff, can you walk through
Were there
the evidence found?
forced entry at the house, like any broken windows or whatever? Does it seem like people just went in and out?
There are concerns at the house that concerned us from the early on part of this investigation, and that's all I will tell you. Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Is there any history with Nancy needing police at her place, or concerns where she was worried about somebody following her, or?
Our investigative team has looked into all of those things, and that has not been brought to my attention. So she may have had something like that, but I'm not aware of it.
What is the extent of collaboration with the federal government? Obviously, FBI is here. CBP, are there other agencies also involved?
CBP's role in this was in our search and rescue mission, where we constantly use them. They have great dogs. Our dogs aren't tracking dogs for this. Theirs are, and so they came out and did that. Anybody else, though, that we've asked for help from, whether it's the FBI, I know if we needed help from CBP or DEA or ATF, they would gladly give it. I've heard from leadership from all sorts of agencies, not just at the federal level, but across the state. Every one of them saying, "Sheriff, you need anything, we're here."
So you obviously said investigators, when they got on scene, they found suspicious circumstances. When the family called originally to report her missing, did they say anything about the state of the home?
I don't know that. I don't know. Let me hang on. Let me make sure I'm getting some different people here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so there was blood that was found inside the house and you're testing it for DNA. How much blood and where was it?
I'm not saying there's blood inside that house or outside that house. What I'm saying is our team processed a scene like you would think of any crime scene. We go in and we process it. We look for things like that: blood, DNA, any kind of physical evidence, fingerprints, anything, and all of that is gathered and submitted to a lab. That lab will report back to us what they find. So from that lab is nothing that would tell us this is who did this.
We'll take a couple more questions, and then the sheriff's got to go.
Sheriff, can you walk through the evidence that was found at the scene in as much detail as possible?
No, I cannot.
What is the bottleneck to the surveillance footage? I know you said some of it is in the cloud, but you've also been reached out to tech companies that are saying they're cooperating. Why do you not have the surveillance footage on media?
That's what I tell them. How come
All right, so there you have it, the sheriff in Pima County, Arizona. And basically, from what we are gathering, there is still very little that is known about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. They're asking for the public's help. If they saw anything, to please report it to law enforcement. But just not much there. Quite a mystery is what I'm gathering from listening to that news conference. They really didn't have an update. It was just really to take some questions from reporters. But yes, she's been missing, reported missing, late Saturday night into Sunday morning. She was last seen around 9:30, 9:45 when she was dropped off at the house. This is Saturday night. And by midday on Sunday, the family reported her missing. So we're going to continue to follow that story, and we all hope that she is found safe and sound and returned back home. All right, so the breaking news is the House has passed that bill. They have passed the bill to end the partial government shutdown in a final vote. That vote was 214 to 217. And this measure is going to fund the federal government departments several departments from the Pentagon, Transportation, Health and Human Services, the State Department, funding it to September 30th. In the meantime, it's going to fund the Department of Homeland Security until February 13th, giving lawmakers an opportunity to negotiate on the reforms that they want to see with ICE. And we just got a statement in from Jennifer McClellan, Congresswoman representing the 4th District in Virginia. And she says, since the House last passed the Department of Homeland Security funding bill, we have only seen greater strife, confusion, and fear resulting from the Trump administration's overly aggressive immigration enforcement tactics. Masked agents continue to break into homes. ICE continues to snatch and detain our most vulnerable, some as young as 5 years old, in deplorable conditions inside makeshift detention centers. U.S. citizens and lawfully present individuals have been detained and deported with little due process. That is part of her statement and her reaction to the funding bill that has just passed. So obviously she is part of the group of lawmakers who wants to do some serious negotiations on ICE operations and bringing some changes into how they operate. She mentioned children. She said some as young as 5 years old in deplorable conditions. That's a good place to shift to Minneapolis, because we have been talking about the young boy, 5-year-old Liam Ramos. He was the one who was taken to a detention center in Texas with his father, and they were just returned back to Texas after a federal judge agreed that Liam should not be in federal custody, and they ordered that the young boy and his father be released and returned back to Minnesota. So today, a news conference by Governor Walz talking about the detention of children by ICE. Let's listen in to that news conference.
In, by all accounts at this point in time, inhumane living conditions where measles are spreading. So I just want to be clear, this is 9 weeks that Minnesota has been under siege by this federal force across all areas. We've seen the horrific results of that in the murders of 2 of our citizens, shootings of another, countless other acts. But amidst all of this week we got an opportunity to breathe a sigh of relief that Liam was brought home. I say that he should have never been gone. We should never have to be. I am not grateful to the federal government for bringing Liam back. I'm grateful for the people who surrounded him and brought him back, and that was not these people. But here's the thing. We don't know how many others are in the same situation that didn't get a photo that went viral. We don't have good confirmation of where they're at. Those are being Minnesotans. These are our children that were taken from us, sent to Texas in the middle of the night, put in inhumane conditions, and then forcing judges to tell them to bring back and bring them back home. We get each reports that get worse, and I just want to highlight something: just how far from normal we've been, and how the federal government is talking. They call these detention centers tender age detention centers. That is just so wrong, and just such a strange usage of words of how they're trying to justify something that cannot be justified. It's been a week since I met with Tom Homan. Expectations have not changed. This force must leave Minnesota. The state of Minnesota and the professionals, nonpartisan judiciary, must do the investigations into the shootings and other abuses of Minnesota's human rights. And this all-out assault on Minnesota across all of state government and all across life must stop. I sent Kristi Noem a letter today demanding clear answers on how many children are currently being held in federal detention centers, where they're at, why they were taken, and what their due process rights are. And I'm going to let the folks here talk about this, that over the past several weeks, just very disturbing, and we visited many of them. You're going to hear from Superintendent Lewis and Fridley that they've shifted the harassment, the assaults towards our schools. And we were very clear about places that were always off limits in ICE operations, whether they were houses of worship, schools, bus stops, hospitals. But we know that's not been the case. They've been waiting at hospitals. They've been waiting because this is where they can get people. And when it comes to children, our schools, we've got video footage at night of ICE officers walking around schools in the middle of the night. We know that we had reports this morning several times, and our bus drivers, they're following the buses to the bus stops where they let kids off. Again, you're going to report on this, but I'm just trying to level set on this. None of this is normal. None of this is okay. None of this makes Minnesota any safer. None of this adheres to the values of this country. All it does is cause terror and trauma to the children who are there, but to the children in their classrooms today who are making little bunnies because their preschool classmate has been all over the news and was ripped away from his families. So we will just make it absolutely clear that we are trying to continue to work with the federal government to find a viable solution, but in all of these things, the onus lies on the federal government to follow the law, follow the court orders, follow human decency, and do the very simple thing of drawing this force back down, doing immigration reform within the rules of law, making sure that the crimes that were committed against the citizens of Minnesota are fully investigated and potentially prosecuted here in the state of Minnesota, and that the assault on Minnesota ends. And I think all of us over the last few days have become very clear that the letter I received last week around the voting rolls was the central theme of this entire situation that we're in, and that proved true down in Georgia. And it proved true by the president's own words yesterday as he said the Republicans need to federalize the elections, especially in the 15 states, which would include Minnesota. So we know what this is about, but the thing that we're about and the reason that we're here today is this is about protecting Minnesotans and most especially our children and our most vulnerable. So I'm grateful to have this team around me. I'm grateful for the work that's being done. There's an awful lot of that happening on the legal front. And with that, I'll turn to Attorney General Ellison.
Thank you, First Lady. Well, yeah, I want to say that we're very grateful for our governor who has been leading from the front in this very difficult time. As you know, we're so happy that Liam Conejo, which means rabbit, Ramos is just 5 years old. But I tell you this, he'll never forget what happened to him. And I remember when I was about 5 years old and living in Detroit, and I remember being on my tiptoes, looking through the window, seeing military vehicles go by. And that was when our city was having civil unrest. And I was about 5. And I'm 62, and I remember it. Anyway, I'm so glad that Liam and his father, Adrian, are home, happy for their family. And I'm grateful for Judge Berry for helping to bring Liam home. But it is a sign of how far we are from the normal rule of law that a judge even would have to make a decision like this one. But I think it's important for people to read the decision. This is an amazing decision for a court, for an American judge to have to write. And if you read the ruling, you'll see that Judge Berry felt the same way that Governor Walz feels and that I feel and the First Lady feels, I think. And that is, he called the Operation Metro Surge ill-conceived and incompetently implemented. Let me tell you, that's about as powerful a language you're ever going to read in a judicial decision. Decrying the pursuit of daily deportation quotas, he said, quote, apparently require traumatizing children, unquote. Again, this is a judge who's prone to mild language, even in serious cases. He called out the government for its, quote, ignorance of an American historical document called the Declaration of Independence. Just to let all of us know how far afield we are from the moorings of our nation. The Trump administration clearly needs a remedial lesson in the founding documents and the values of our country. And I think that the educators standing behind me are the ones to do that. Over the last few weeks, I've had to remind the administration about the First Amendment, the freedom of the press, as we see that Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, although 2 courts found that there was no probable cause to arrest Don Lemon. The Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. All of a sudden, Trump and his allies have forgotten that they've been the one saying a lot of stuff about the Second Amendment. The second someone who doesn't agree with them exploits that right, now it's an issue. The Fourth Amendment that protects all of us from unlawful search and seizure. In his order releasing Liam and his father, Judge Bailey quoted the Fourth Amendment in its entirety, and he also wrote, quote, administrative warrants issued by the executive branch to itself do not pass probable cause muster, unquote, adding that this is called the fox guarding the henhouse. And, of course, the 10th Amendment, critically important, in fact, a founding, kind of the glue that holds federalism together, the power balance between the federal government and the states, attempts to commandeer Minnesota's resources and to bully us into compliance, which it cannot do. It's called commandeering, and we filed a lawsuit against it. Though we did not get the TRO that we felt we deserved, our case moves on, and we are very, very optimistic about the outcome. In his decision, Judge Bliley recalled how our nation in its infancy stood up to tyranny, and he quoted Thomas Jefferson's writing about the would-be authoritarian king sending swarms of officers to harass our people. Does that sound familiar? The administration has forgotten that standing up to tyranny is our DNA as Americans. It is in the founding and original documents of our nation and the incidents that preceded the founding of the United States and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So I cannot believe that I have to offer reminders of this nature and on how the federal government should treat our children. Minnesotans have shown so much courage, but we shouldn't have to ask for that kind of courage of our children. But they have shown it. Kids should be thinking about homework or their favorite Pokemon. I mean, is that still a thing? Maybe I'm behind the times. Or getting a good night's sleep, or not worrying about if their father or mother will come home, or whether they'll be taken against their will to a faraway state or to a country that they've never known. But sadly, as Judge Barry also wrote, quote, observing human behavior confirms that for some of us, the perfidious lust for unbridled power and the imposition of cruelty in its quest know no bounds and are bereft of human decency. Amen. Unquote. Minnesotans know. Clearly the judge knows. Sadly, our kids know too. So we're going to take not just the letter, but the spirit of this great decision by a wonderful jurist and carry on in defense of the rights of all Minnesotans. Thank you, Governor.
Good afternoon. I don't have much to say today because for me, this is extremely simple. What is happening right now is harming children. Just the other day, I was on an airplane heading home, and in the seat next to me was a 5-year-old who wanted nothing more than to share his grapes with me, play little number games, and with pure delight, feel my bald head like it was the funniest thing he had ever seen. And to my new young friend, Wes, from central Minnesota, thank you for making that plane ride more fun than expected. You see, Wes doesn't care about headlines.
All right, so there you have it, a news conference in Minnesota with Governor Walz and the Attorney General of Minnesota talking about the detention of children. And this all stems from that case that grabbed national headlines with 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos, who was detained with his father in the Dilley detention center in Texas, and how so many people were outraged by those images that they saw with the young little boy being detained. And so the governor saying that he has written to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to ask her exactly how many children have been detained, where are they, and what are their rights. We know an independent analysis by the Marshall Project showed, that's a nonprofit news organization, and they concluded through their investigation that at least 3,800 people under the age of 18, including 20 infants, were detained in 2025. Those are numbers, again, by the Marshall Project, a nonprofit news organization. All right, so this is clearly an issue that we will continue to follow as we look to see what will happen over the next couple of weeks with the lawmakers on both sides of the aisle negotiating ICE operations and some of the reforms that they want to see with how they function. Let's take a break right now. We're going to come back. We still have a lot going on. We have a lot more to get to. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. We want to go back to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing to, quote, examine the competitive impact of the proposed Netflix-Warner Brothers transaction. Now, we know that Netflix and Warner Brothers entered into an agreement under which Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers, including the film and television studios HBO Max and HBO. And this is an $82.7 billion deal. So Senator Booker is speaking now. Let's listen
in fact, be helpful for Congress to question them about this effort, especially given the serious concerns that I have regarding President Trump's involvement in the deal and the allegations of political favoritism. We're in an unprecedented time where we're seeing executive power being exercised in a way that Congress should be checking. We have seen allegations that Paramount has promised the president to make sweeping changes to CNN after Trump said that he thinks, quote, the people that have run CNN for the last long period of time are a disgrace. I think that it's imperative that CNN be sold, end quote. Days after the Netflix-Warner Brothers deal was announced, President Trump purchased $2 million in stocks and bonds in both Netflix and Warner Brothers. I think it's outrageous for any senator, any House member, or for the president or vice president for that matter, to be trading in individual stocks when they have extraordinary insider information and influence over policies that move corporate power. This is, again, another example of the corruption that is cancerously attacking our democracy. President Trump is using government power to reward allies, punish perceived enemies, and enable private enrichment at rates we have not seen before. While ordinary Americans are left paying higher prices, consumers are suffering, and money is siphoned off to the top, leaving families and workers worse off. And aside from the concerns of this administration's exploitation of antitrust enforcement, the acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery by either Netflix or Paramount or any other competitor would result in concerning consolidation of a sector of our economy that has already been putting a squeeze on consumers and artists. Let's be clear, the sale of Warner Brothers to either Netflix or Paramount would have a significant impact on tens of thousands of Americans that work in the entertainment industry and American consumers. I've been hearing from people throughout this industry concerns, fears, worries, legitimate folks that don't have a political axe to grind who are very concerned about the matters we're discussing today and how they're going to impact their lives. So this is not an either-or situation. With either merger, another corporation will gain significant control over what we see, what we hear, and the news we consume. The acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery by either Netflix or Paramount or any other competitor would result in consolidation of a sector of our economy that is already seeing significant consolidation. It's something that we should be talking about, and we should be asking the serious questions. With either merger, another corporation will have that control, increased control over what we see, what we hear, and what news we consume. Now, let's be clear. I was born in 1969. My father made me sit down and watch Star Trek and watch Nichelle Nichols, one of the first African-American women to star in a show like that. Made me watch movies like In the Heat of the Night. So much of our culture was shaped by extraordinary artists who showed diverse voices, who dreamed and saw a future that seemed almost impossible, that in fact there'd be a black senator sitting right now as a ranking member of this kind of committee. Art matters. Art is vital. With a merger like this, it has real concerns about art, about culture, about the voices of Americans, about the moral imagination of a nation. For years, workers, creators, and consumers have been told that consolidation in media and streaming would mean more choice, more unique stories, lower prices. I don't think we've seen that. What we have seen with each merger is higher subscription costs, fewer streaming options, shrinking creative opportunities. I've heard them from artists that I know personally. They speak of lower pay and growing instability for workers across the industry. Many voices that felt that just a decade ago they had chances to bring their art to life now worry that those options are dwindling. Even now, pre-merger, a small number of streaming companies control a lot, from content production to distribution and to the actual platforms through which consumers access entertainment. We are seeing a lot of vertical integration. We know Netflix power. I am a subscriber. I watch Netflix with probably hours I don't want to confess here in an open hearing and put on the record, but it is the dominant streaming platform of my household as well as in our nation. And that's just domestically. It has an extraordinary global scale and reach. Worldwide, they have over 325 million consumers, with their closest competitor, Disney Plus, with half of that at 130 million subscribers worldwide. Warner Brothers controls one of the most valuable and largest content libraries in the world, including HBO, Harry Potter, CNN, and for me, one of my favorite platforms is DC Comics. And the fact is that Netflix-Warner Brothers transaction would consolidate the largest distribution platforms with one of the largest content producers, and that should raise questions that Americans should have answered. I have concerns about Netflix getting more power over consumers and leaving fewer alternatives and streaming platforms. I have concerns about startups and competition, and of course, as I've already stated, about the impact on artists and artistry in our country. I am angry about our antitrust laws, which have been ignored by Democrats and Republicans in the White House. I believe that we are now seeing consolidation that is screwing Americans from our farms to pharma. We are in a crisis in America. Our antitrust laws are designed to ensure that independent studios, smaller streaming services, and new entrants are not shut out and left unable to compete with companies that control both content and distribution. The concern that so many Americans have is not just about their jobs and the prices they're paying, but as my father, should he be alive right now, would be concerned about less movies and less original story making.
All right, so you've been listening to Senator Booker out of New Jersey talking about the merger between Warner Brothers and Netflix. This is a Senate Judiciary Committee, and they're holding a hearing to examine the competitive impact of that proposed Netflix-Warner transaction. And obviously you heard Booker and the side that he's on, not very happy about this, worried about what this might mean for art and culture and the voices of America, as he said. All right, we're going to switch over to another senator, our senator here in Virginia, Mark Warner. Mark Warner held a news conference today talking about voting integrity, I should say. He did this as part of the intelligence oversight, and the news conference was on what he calls Trump's escalating threats to free and fair elections. I mentioned earlier in Live Impact that we would get back to this topic, and that was about Tulsi Gabbard being in Fulton County, Georgia, whenever the FBI did that raid on the elections office and took several ballots from 2020. She was there. She is the head of the Department of National Intelligence. There have been a lot of questions as to why would she, in the position that she's in, be down there in Georgia. But we heard from Caroline Levitt a little bit earlier that that Donald Trump has appointed Tulsi Gabbard to that position to look at election security. So let's listen to Senator Mark Warner and get an idea of what his concerns are.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. The strength of our democracy depends upon clear lines between politics and law enforcement, between intelligence and criminal investigations, and most importantly, between the White House and the ballot box. What happened in Georgia last week erased those lines that are simply unacceptable, and this is even a more heightened concern after the president's comments last night. And let me be clear about why this matters. Regardless of what had been stated, this is not about the 2020 election. That election has been litigated, audited, recounted, and repeatedly upheld by courts and election officials, including lots and lots of Republican election officials. This is frankly about what comes next. It is deeply alarming that just yesterday the president called for Republicans, his words, to take over and nationalize voting in multiple states. That statement alone makes clear that this threat to our election security, the basic premise of our democracy, is forward-looking to 2026 and to 2028, and candidly to the institutions that safeguard our democracy. This is about whether these same tactics we're seeing now, or worse, will be used to disrupt free and fair elections. One of the reasons why, as we think about ICE reform, the notion of roving ICE patrols parading around election polling stations is a very real and legitimate concern. And truthfully, as we've seen, whether the very institutions meant to protect our democracy will be misused to upheaval. So let's be clear. It is inappropriate for a sitting president to personally involve himself in a criminal investigation tied to an election he lost. it is inappropriate for the president to advocate for actions that are wholly at odds with the Constitution and 2.5 centuries of state and local elections. It is inappropriate for the Director of National Intelligence to insert herself into a domestic law enforcement operation far outside her statutory role. And it is profoundly inappropriate for either of them to blur the lines between intelligence, law enforcement, and partisan politics. But that is exactly what happened last week in Fulton County. As Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I want to underscore a core legal boundary. U.S. intelligence agencies are structured to operate overseas, not on domestic soil. The National Security Act and other laws exist precisely to prevent election officials or intelligence officials from surveilling or intervening in domestic political matters. I may be the only one, well, maybe somebody else is old enough to remember that a lot of this came about because of actions of the Nixon administration back in the 60s. Those actions that literally resulted in the creation of the Oversight Committee that I now sit as chair and now vice chair. Because we know when intelligence personnel are inserted into domestic criminal investigation, especially one launched under such a thin veil of legitimacy, it raises serious legal and constitutional questions and politicizes an institution that must remain neutral and apolitical. The Director of National Intelligence does not conduct criminal investigations. She has no role in executing search warrants, and she does not belong on the scene of a domestic FBI search, particularly one tied to the president's personal grievances carried out under the pretense of normal law enforcement. Now, Director Gabbard argues that her presence was justified by, quote, broad statutory authority. But broad authority to analyze intelligence is not a license to participate in a sham investigation. And it certainly does not justify facilitating direct contact between the frontline FBI agents doing this investigation directly to the President of the United States. That phone call alone should concern every American because it didn't occur in a vacuum. Now, if this administration were genuinely committed to election security, its actions would reflect that. Instead, we have seen the absolute opposite, the systemic weakening of the very institutions designed to protect our elections from real threats. And remarkably, many of these organizations and entities were put in place under the first Trump administration. So what have they done? The administration disbanded the FBI's Foreign Intelligence Task Force, the unit created in 2017 to investigate foreign interference, share intelligence across agencies, and work with the private sector to close cyber vulnerabilities. It has gutted enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which exists to expose covert foreign influence in our political system. It dismantled the Office of the Director of National Intelligence's own Foreign Malign Influence Center, a center created by law. This is not an option for Tulsi Gabbard to dismiss. This center was created by law to track and document state-sponsored threats to our elections and candidates, and do so with transparency designed to make sure politics stays out of its work. And it has slashed the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA's, election security workforce, cutting more than a third of the agency and ending funding for programs that provided direct cybersecurity support to state and local elections. These are not the actions of an administration that's serious about election security. These are the actions of an administration clearing away safeguards while simultaneously inserting itself into domestic investigations, seizing election materials as they did in Georgia, and publicly calling for Republicans, again, to take over and nationalize voting in multiple states. When you put all of this together, it is clear that what happened in Fulton County is not about revisiting the past. It is about shaping the outcome of future elections. And quite honestly, dismantling the very guardrails that were put in place to keep them free and fair. This is why it cannot be brushed aside with carefully worded letters from Director Gabbard. She owes Congress, and more important, the American people, direct answers. So once again, I'm calling on the Director of National Intelligence to appear in person before the Senate Intelligence Committee to testify under oath about her role in this matter. She needs to explain why she believed it was appropriate to involve herself in a domestic criminal investigation, why she facilitated direct contact between the president and FBI agents on the ground, and what safeguards, if any, were put in place to protect against direct political interference. Now, we all know that Americans deserve free elections, safe from political intimidation. They deserve a justice system that operates independently, and they deserve accountability when those very safeguards are put at risk. As Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I'm going to use every tool I can to make sure that we get those answers. And before I take questions, I remember back a year ago at this time when people would often ask me when they were seeing the actions of the Trump administration, do you think we'll have free and fair elections in 26 or in 28? And my response at that point was, I think you're overreacting. I have deep concerns about the fairness of our elections in 26 and 28 right now. I have concerns about the elections in primaries in our country. I have concerns about the elections that may take place in Virginia in terms of a redistricting referendum. These kind of actions that have taken place over the last year, as we've seen this systemic dismantling of the very protections that were put in place by, again, the first Trump administration. If it doesn't scare the heck out of you, it should. And then, if you go back to the report, the Bipartisan Intelligence Committee investigation report into the 2016 interference, unanimously agreed to by including the Secretary of State and all of the members of the committee, it said one of the strongest protections we had about interference in our election system was the fact of our decentralization, that we have these elections carried out as laid out in the Constitution by states and localities.